next week, God willing, we will be where? In Jerusalem. There's a Sudas Odaya in honor of Dave Stern, thanking God for saving him and his family. So that's going to be in Jerusalem next Thursday evening, starting at 6:45. And I intend to attend. So be there or be square. So we're not going to have our usual thing here. Maybe we'll have time. Maybe we'll have time to study there also. The rabbi mentioned this week the story of Yehoshafat, who was a righteous king of Judah, who was castigated by Yehu ben Hanani Haroeh, Jehu son of Hanani, the seer. And by the way, whenever it says, Chazal tells us, whenever you have someone called the Navi, so-and-so son of so-and-so the Navi, just like you say so-and-so son of so-and-so the Kohen modifies both the father and the son. So too in this case, Hanani HaRoeh is also mentioned in the books of the prophets. There's Yehu ben Hanani, and around the same time there's Hanani HaRoeh. So this is a father-son team. Yehu ben Hanani outlived King Achav of Israel. And by the way, wait a minute. You look early in the book of Kings. Yehu ben Hanani is also the one who prophesied the downfall of the house of Baasha, basically at the hands of Zimri, who was king for all of a week before getting taken out by Achav's father. And that's the beginning of the Omri dynasty. So Achav basically his reign came to an end well more than 20-something years, almost 30 years after Omri came to power. So Yehu ben Hanani had a long career as a Navi. Basically, his prophecy about the downfall of Baasha's dynasty, like I said, well preceded Ahab's death, and he castigated Yehoshafat afterwards. It says you joined with a righteous man, with a wicked man. That's not what God wants you to do. Now, there's an important question that needs to be addressed in this whole. Well, two questions that need to be addressed in this whole parsha. The first is, now the Navi is telling him you shouldn't have joined forces with Achav. At the beginning of the story, in the book of Kings, it says, "Vayashlem Yehoshafat imelech Yisrael." Yehoshafat made peace with the king of Israel. Now, why is that important? Because up until then, there was always hostility between whoever's king of the 10 tribes and king of Yehuda. At that point, it says in the book of Chronicles, in a parallel passage, it says, "Vayitchatem." Yehoshaphat entered into marriage with Achav. In what way? Their children were married. That's explicit. Achav's daughter Atalia was married to Yehoram, who was Yehoshaphat's son. So that's seemingly how they made peace through a diplomatic marriage. And that preceded Ahab's death by many years, well over a decade. So why did the Navi only wait now until once Achav died and Yehoshaphat had gone to war with him? Yehoshaphat survived the battle. Achav was the major casualty of that battle. Why did the Navi wait this long to say, hey, you really shouldn't be joining forces with Ahab? Why then? Why not? I don't know, when they announced the Shidduch, or when there was talk of the Shidduch. It's not like Yehoram, son of Yehoshaphat, and Atalia, Achav's daughter, it just came out of nowhere. Why didn't he, for example, say your marriage to this woman, who very well, I don't know, maybe her Judaism was in question, says Yehoram and Achav and Achaziah. It gets confusing. Ahab had two sons, Yehoram and Achaziah. Achaziah was the older, Yehoram was the younger. And this Achaziah took the throne first after Ahab was killed, but he was taken out very quickly, punished by God for his wickedness. It says he was just as wicked from his mother and his father. That was Jezebel, Achav's wife. So, and then it says he died without children, or at least without sons. So his brother Yehoram became king, Achav's second son. And also says that he was also the son of Achav and Jezebel, not from another woman. It's almost asked the question, wait, Jezebel was a Sidonian princess. She was the daughter of the king of Phoenicia, the king of the Sidonians. Was her conversion legitimate? I hope so. But she was an idolatrous woman. She practiced idolatry and was a murderess also. Everything about her was bad. So how legitimate was her conversion? And if her conversion wasn't legitimate, how Jewish were her children? That's something I wanted to bring up. And her third child was Atalia, the one who married Yehoshaphat's son Yehoram. Basically, both Yehoshaphat and Achav had sons called Yehoram, who reigned after them. And this Yehoram of Judah, to make it even more confusing, had a son called Achaziah. So Achav had sons Yehoram and Achaziah. The older is Yehoram. The younger is the older is Achaziah. The younger is Yehoram. Yeah, we're keeping track. And Yehoshaphat had a son Yehoram and a grandson Achaziah. And don't forget, and around the same time, sometime later, Yehoash was king of Judah. Yehoash ben Achaziah was the child king of Judah, and the third king of the Yehu dynasty. Yehu's son was Yehoachaz, which is Achaziah backwards, and his son was Yehoash also. So there's some overlap in names. So the question that we have to ask is, why did the Navi only now intervene? Not only that, the sages say, by the way, that this actually started well before basically Yehoram was even born. It was started in Asa's days. Asa was the king of Yehuda before Yehoshaphat, his father, his righteous father. And based on a verse in Divrei Yamim, they said it basically started when Omri took the throne. What happened with Omri taking the throne? Omri took the throne. There was a machlokes. Tivni ben Ginat should be king or Omri should be king. There was basically elections and politicking and all sorts of things the Navi doesn't get into because it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. But
eventually it says the Vayit Chazek. The people suddenly, Omri got more backing. Tivni died. Omri became king, sole king. He consolidated his power. And based on this verse over here, it says Achaziah, son of Yehoram, took the throne at the age of 22. That's according to the Book of Kings. According to the Book of Chronicles, he was 42. Now that's impossible. Why? His own father was dead at the age of 40. So a man can't take the throne at 42 after his father dies at the age of 40. It's a physical impossibility, at least without time travel, before we invented that. So they say, no, 42 years before Achaziah took the throne, that's when this whole thing, the Shidduchim began. That's when it basically, and this is another thing I have to address, it says that Asa married off his son Yehoshaphat to Omri's daughter. And it doesn't say that anywhere in the Psukim. It is explicit that Asa's grandson Yehoram married Omri's granddaughter. That's two psukim that's a pasuk in Tanakh. It says Vayit Chatein Yehoshaphat. In his own reign, Yehoshaphat did it. So please, I've checked the old psukim. You're not going to find it. Okay, it's not a pasuk. Rashi brings it up.
I at least remember seeing it in the commentaries.
Yes, it's in the commentaries.
Because I was just reading it.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to clarify over here. And the next time the Navi castigates or rebukes Yehoshaphat is once again, Achav's son Achaziah had this whole plan to build a lot of ships at Eilat, and just like Shlomo HaMelech did, he teamed up with the Phoenicians of his day, and they built a lot of boats, right? And that's how they brought riches over to Shlomo. They went to places like Ophir and all that. So basically, like I showed the kids, when you drive down to Eilat, what do you see coming in the opposite lanes? What's the major thing that you suddenly notice on the roads in the opposite lanes coming northbound from Eilat to the rest of Israel? Car carriers. Car carriers, yes. Trucks loaded with automobiles, brand new automobiles. And then you get to Eilat, and you see in some of the areas along the beach, there's gigantic parking lots full of brand new, crisp automobiles, the most Teslas I've ever seen in my life, in one spot. Why are there a lot of automobiles coming into Eilat? The answer is... Come on, someone give me the answer. The answer is that if shipping comes from the Western world, it stops at the Mediterranean. There's ports. There's the Ashkelon and Ashdod area, Haifa, right? There's ports. That's if boats are coming from the West. If shipping is coming from the East, the way to reach Israel is how? Through the Red Sea, through the Gulf of Aqaba. So anything coming from the Pacific and the Indian Ocean goes up that way, the Eilat port. And that's the way it was today. That's the way it is today, and that's the way it was back in ancient times. So Yehoshaphat had this scheme with Achaziah, his basically his brother-in-law. Sorry, his son's brother-in-law. Right, he married off his son Yehoram to Atalia, who was the brother of Achaziah, the sister of Achaziah, king of Israel. And they had this whole scheme that they were going to build boats, but the boats got destroyed by an act of God. And the Navi told him, you really shouldn't join up with Achaziah. God doesn't like that. So Yehoshaphat declined the next time he was given that offer. So like I said, the Navi is going to tell Yehoshaphat, you shouldn't go to war with Achav. You shouldn't go into business with his son. Why didn't he tell him also, maybe you shouldn't make a shidduch with for your son with Achav's daughter? It's a question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I intend to answer that. I also intend to answer this difficulty that Rashi, for example, brings this idea that the marriage happened between Yehoshaphat, not Yehoshaphat's son, and Omri's daughter, and not Achav's daughter. Like it happened across two generations, because it's explicit that Yehoram, son of Yehoshaphat, and Atalia were married. There's a few psukim that point that out. Right? It also says Achaziah took the throne. Who was his mother? Shemimo Atalia Bath Omri Melech Yisrael. Right? You see that verse?
Mm-hmm.
It says that Yehoram took. It says Achaziah took the throne. His mother's name was Atalia, both Omri Melech Yisrael. And earlier it says Yehoram was up to no good himself as king, because Ki Bat Achav Haitalo Liisha, was a daughter of Ahab, was his wife.
Mm-hmm.
So now the question is, wait a minute, was she Ahab's daughter or Omri's daughter? The answer is both. You can call someone also by the grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously, but the only way you can't be Makayim that she was Achav's sister, for example, just the daughter of Omri. It doesn't work. So if you look at this this chart I put here on the screen for everybody, assuming like most of the commentaries do, that the years of the kings of Judah are complete years, and also each of the ages that they were when they took the throne are mentioned. So you start here in year 6 of Asa. That's basically when Yehoshaphat was born. Why? Because Yehoshaphat took the throne at the age of 35, after his father had reigned for 41 years. So Yehoshaphat was born year 6 of Asa. That's what you can derive from the explicit psukim. According to Chazal, this is strange. Asa doesn't tell you what age he was, what age he took the throne. That piece of information is left out. Him and Shlomo Melech, it doesn't tell you how old they were when they took the throne, which is kind of weird, because all the other legitimate kings, starting with Saul, it tells you, or at least it tries to tell you, how old each of them were when they took the throne, right? So Chazal fill it in and say he reigned for 41 years. That's explicit. He died at the age of 80.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big tzaddik. He died at the age of 80. I haven't found a remez to that, why that would be the case, but it means he became king at the age of 39. So according to this tradition, Asa was 45 when his son Yehoshaphat was born. In year 31 of Asa, that's when Omri consolidated power. And that's when Rashi says that's when the shidduch was made. Now, Yehoshaphat was then 25. Right? 30, that's 25 years later. So Yehoshaphat was 25. And year 34 of Asa, that's when Yehoram was born. Yehoram was born to Yehoshaphat. So Yehoshaphat was then 28. So how old was Asa? Well, he was 7 years out of being 8. He would be 73. Asa is 73. Yehoshaphat is 28. And Yehoram is just a newborn. That's year 34 of Asa. And that's also 3 years after Omri fully became king. And then year 1 of Yehoshaphat would bring us to year 42 of total of Asa's reign. Mm-hmm. So as though we're starting Asa's reign is year 1. And Yehoshaphat was 35. Yehoram was then 7. Still too young maybe to marry Atalia. In Yehoshaphat's year 12, 11 years into his reign, you see that Achaziah is born. That's when Achaziah was born to Yehoram. Yehoram was 18 at the time. Mm-hmm. Yehoshaphat was 48. Now, Yehoram has Achaziah at the age of 18. It says in Divrei Yomim that really Achaziah was his youngest son. Yeah, it says, well, I mean, his youngest son. How is he supposed to become king? The answer, it says he had wars. I think it was the Edomites took away many of his sons into captivity, killed some of them too, whatever it is. So the only left him was his youngest son, and that's the one who succeeded him. Mm-hmm. So wait a minute. That means Yoram, I guess, was married to Atalia in the intervening years, and they had a few children. Unless he had some older children by some other woman or women, as it does say Nashav. It mentions he has other wives, and it says his wives are taken to captivity, except for Atalia, so he had other wives. So it must be, we don't know when the marriage actually happened. We do know that Yoram was born, like I said, year 12 of Yehoshaphat. Yoram was 18. That's when Achaziah was born. And I guess the marriage happened shortly before that. Okay. Obviously, he had children. He had older children before then. So maybe he was married at the age of 15 originally to some of his wives. Like I said, it's unclear. Yoram took the throne in year 66 of the total since Asa first took the throne. He took the throne at age 32. His son Achaziah was then 14. And then it says Achaziah took over some 8 years later at the age of 22. His father was dead at 40. Now it says this is 42 years when he was 42 years old. What does it mean? 22 years or 42? No, if you go back 42 years, that's the year Omri basically consolidated power. So they say that this 42, what did Omri consolidating power have to do with anything? He was able to become king because he had popular backing, especially from Asa, king of Yehuda, who sort of intervened, his election interference, if you will, by saying that he was going to have a shidduch. My proposal is, to answer part of the question, is that Asa basically arranged with Omri that their grandchildren would be married. Remember, Yehoram wasn't even born when Omri took the throne. It's that Asa said, when I have a grandson, I'm going to marry him off to his this Omri's granddaughter through his through his heir apparent Achav, and that's what happened. Yoram was born 3 years after that, and sometime in the reign of Yehoshafat, that's when they were actually married. That's when the wedding actually took place. So it was just a plan, but it didn't actually go through. That's why Navi certainly didn't tell Asa, "Oh, you're doing something wrong," because he hadn't done anything wrong yet. He was just planning. Yes, we're going to have our grandchildren be married. That's the diplomatic marriage, and that also explains why you don't see in any pasuk whatsoever that Asa did this. It's not that Asa arranged the marriage. It doesn't say, like you could read in Pashtus and Rashi, that Asa married off his son to Omri's daughter. It says explicitly that it was Yehoshafat who vayitchatein Yehoshafat im Achav. It was Yehoshafat who married into Achav's family. L'hitchatein im, another man, means to have your kid marry his kid. What's called in Hebrew mechutanim, or Yiddish. That's Yiddish. Mechutanim is the Hebrew. Machatunim is, or some other crazy pronunciation, is basically the Yiddish form, right? So yeah, like my friend pointed out, he grew up speaking Yiddish and Hebrew and English. He's trilingual, and in the American South. So he had to explain to someone, what's a mechutin? And you say it's on my mechutin. What's a mechutin? How do you explain that? Tell one of your Gentile friends in America, I have a mechutin. I don't have a mechutin yet, but you say, what's your mechutin? Mechutin is your child's parents-in-law. Okay. The people with whom you've made a wedding. So that's your mechutin. You could have many mechutins. So my point is, the verses, both in Book of Kings and in the Book of Chronicles, say there was Yehoshafat. They pin it on Yehoshafat making peace with Achav and also marrying into Achav's family. Why not say Asa made peace with Omri? Or why not say Omri made peace with Asa? Or that they, them. It's because the marriage was only affected, I would guess, it took 3 years just for Yehoram to be born. And still, by the age of 7, he was not yet married, apparently. And it was sometime, I guess, at the age, what age were they getting married back then? Girls were getting married at the age of 12, and boys, 14 or 15, basically. So it took about 18 years or so just for the two children to be ready. Now, is that sort of crazy? No, it's not. In the olden days, marriages were arranged sometimes in the cradle. And by the way, that's something that our society suffers from. If we would have more arranged marriages, a lot more of the people who are just not go-getters, they're people who are too shy, basically. That's my feeling, the shidduch crisis. What's it caused by? Guys who just don't have the drive to do what it takes to find a mate. And a lot of women, certainly it's not the women's responsibility, it's the man's responsibility to go find a woman, right? Men do the courting. At least that's the way it was. If you have a society where women are basically doing that, that's a messed up society. So men aren't going to like those types of women who are like that. Yeah, that's just how it goes. So yeah, so it used to be a lot of men, like the type of men who you see nowadays, who remain single for a very long time. There's nothing wrong with them. They could be very good husbands and fathers. Just the problem is they don't have that oomph to go do what needs to be done. It used to be men like that got shidduchim because their parents took care of them. There's a story, I think it was in Rebbetzin Meiselman's autobiography, which basically describes her brother, the Rabbi Soloveitchik, and was like growing up with her father, the great Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik. And she says a story, Ben, the father comes in and says to the daughter, "Congratulations, the 12-year-old, congratulations, you're a Kala. We've arranged the marriage for you." So for many people, arranged marriages actually worked out. Yes, so there's a joke. Don't you know that 1 out of 25 arranged marriages ends in divorce? It's still a pretty good success rate. All right. So for many people, an arranged marriage would be good. I think that we should go back to that, certainly for certain guys and certain girls. That's just my opinion. But what do you know? You can't fight the universe, right? No one does that anymore in our circles. So I think we lose out. Either way, my point is that it's not that any son of Asa married any daughter of Omri. There's no reason to say it. It doesn't say anywhere that such a thing happened. Psukim say that it was basically Asa's grandson who married Omri's granddaughter, but the plan was put in motion around then. So you could have this chart over here, and this matches up with everything we have in the Psukim. So now the answer to the question is, so why did Navi only get on Yehoshaphat's case when he actually did something? Because that's when he actually did something. Technically speaking, Atalia, you could have said when she was married off at a young age, and she was one woman surrounded by tzaddikim, in the house of Yehoshafat and his young son. Perhaps maybe it would have worked out. Yes, it's not the ideal shidduch, but it's not a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe it's a kiruv, you could say. I don't know. They technically speaking, like Rabbi Avi Miller says, Achav's family was very frum except for the whole Baal thing. Other than that, they kept the Torah. It's like a lot of frum people nowadays. Like the frum guy I was describing before, he doesn't believe in the divinity of the Torah. He is the worst kafiras and Bible criticism, like the worst kind. And the whole thing, and marries two men to each other and calls himself Orthodox. So I think that the guy really does keep Shabbos and really does keep kashrus and really does. He might love the Torah, and he's given his life to live in the land of Israel and help the people of Israel. But there's just two things, like that's he thinks that Isser Skila is no longer an Isser Skila, and that the Torah is not divine.
2 out of 6:13.
Yeah. So too, there was Achav's family was very frum, except for the whole no going to Jerusalem thing for pilgrimage, and instead of just that whole golden calf thing at Beit El and the golden calf in Dan as a replacement, we'll build an actual idolatrous shrine to Baal. Yeah. So but other than that, they were frum. So that's the problem. There was a classic joke about the Apikoros. There was a guy in Vilna, I think it was, the local Apikoros. This in, let's say, the late times, like late 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
Real Apikoros, doesn't believe it. Wants to get all the other Jews to be Machal Shabbos and all that. He considered himself, a real pioneer. And he heard of an even bigger Apikoros, the Apikoros of Kovno.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Oh, I told you a joke.
No, I've heard it before. I love it.
He wants to see who's a bigger Apikoros. Like, how can he be the big Apikoros? He goes to visit the big Apikoros of Kovno, who's a more senior Apikoros, and a maskil and all that. And he sees the guy, gets there before Shabbos, and he's very much busy getting ready for Shabbos. And he does all Shabbos preparations and goes to mikveh and there's Makabel Shabbos, the Slavas and all that. Then they have a nice Shabbos meal and everything. Next morning they go to shul. It's a great Shabbos, like Shabbos with the Rebbe. And there's nothing, he doesn't miss the beat. And after Shabbos, he finds says, great Apikoros. I don't get it. Where's the Apikorsis? 100% of from guy. Says, I just happen not to believe in God so much. You, with all your averas and eating pork and chilul Shabbos, you're a guy. I'm an Apikoros. And by the way, this plays out also in the lamentation of one of the, I guess, the founding Zionists, one of the secular white Ashkenazi secular Protexia Zionists of the generation that founded the state. He says, we wanted to make a great society of Apikorsim, Ben Gurion times Apikorsim, and instead, what we made was a whole country of Amaratzim. It didn't really work out the way it was supposed to do. Okay, so I hope that answers these questions, and also this is a good clarification of this idea. So Yehoshafat did marry off his daughter to Achav's daughter. It's not that Yehoshafat himself was married also to Achav's sister. Then also, by the way, then the ensuing marriage would be even weirder. By then they had stopped marrying cousins, things like that.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.